Yeah, so my name's Robert Tyler, and I'm a Contaminated Land Officer at the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea.
Hi, my name's Clay Durrant. I work for the Environment Agency and I'm a Technical Officer in the Groundwater and Land Quality team.
So in terms of what I do in my role on a day-to-day basis, I kind of do quite a bit of planning related work. So that's advising our planning authority on kind of whether contaminated land related reporting that's been submitted for applications is satisfactory or not. And so that, as a result of that, because quite often the information we get isn't satisfactory, so we have to kind of work closely with environmental consultants to kind of identify kind of what we need from them.
So my job entails providing sort of technical support with regards to protection and restoration of groundwater to a variety of people, both internal teams within the Environment Agency and also to external customers through things like the planning process. It largely involves reviewing site investigation data, development of conceptual site models, risk assessments, and then depending on the results of the risk assessment whether or not there's a requirement for some sort of mitigation for a proposed activity, whether that's a development or a discharge to the environment to ensure that groundwater is protected.
It's an interesting question, kind of what qualifications do you need to be a contaminated land officer? I mean, certainly when I started out in the industry, you tended to have a kind of a geology or an engineering background, and they also kind of accepted people with science backgrounds. So my personal education, having chemistry and the environmental management, made me a good candidate. I mean, obviously things have come on a lot over the years, and I mean you actually have contaminated land masters now that you can do, which are kind of brilliant courses. They give you everything that you need to do the job.
The role requires a degree in a relevant subject. So for me, the degree that I have is an environmental science degree, which I completed at the University of East Anglia. Now, prior to going to university, I hadn't completed any A-levels, so in my mid-20s I returned to education and undertook and completed an access course in science-related disciplines, which enabled me to get the required entry requirements to be able to go to university. So I sort of came to it a bit later in the day than most people, but yeah, it was certainly worth it. I'm certainly much more satisfied now than I was.
I've always really enjoyed kind of the challenge, kind of the site work, the practical problem solving, and I mean certainly in the public sector, obviously working for the public and making a real difference to people's lives.
I started working in the area of contaminated. I became interested in working in the area of contaminated land because of university. In my first year there was a focus on groundwater. I think like most people I had an awareness of the fact that there's a water table, but I'd never really considered it further, and it was just very eye-opening and really sort of piqued my interest, and from that's why I became interested in issues that affect groundwater quality, and resulted in me working for the Environment Agency.
One of the most rewarding sides of the contaminated land regime is actually working with residents and people and kind of giving them the reassurance that they need to kind of live in their kind of properties happily. Apart from that, I mean, like any big organisation, we're always having to come up with ideas, kind of write policy, strategy, and kind of develop projects to kind of further contaminated land, but also kind of other kind of interests of the authority as well.
The favourite part of my job, I think the variety is great. I get to provide support on a whole range of issues, whether they be a proposal to discharge, say, treated effluent to the environment. So I'd be involved in the environmental permitting side of that, through to remediation of brownfield sites where there's contamination present, such as gasworks, and it's just, you know, each day is slightly different things, and you get to see that sort of the whole breadth of different sites and cases, which is great.
So in terms of kind of why you should think about a career in contaminated land, I think it's a very personal decision. I mean, certainly as a regulator, if you're someone who wants to do kind of good, and also have kind of an interesting career, kind of working with developers, kind of residents, all sorts of people, then it is a really kind of good and rewarding career. If you're someone who's more kind of money orientated, it's maybe not for you. But there, again, I mean, there are plenty of good careers in industry, and I think kind of whether you're in industry or local government, there are plenty of opportunities to kind of progress within organisations.
My advice to anyone considering this as a career path would be to really focus on the choice of degree that you're thinking about undertaking. You want to make sure that it's really quite multidisciplinary. It looks at, has multiple modules with regards to chemistry, different environmental settings, and geology and hydrogeology, as well as something that perhaps has some provides some legislative context within the modules that are taught, because it really is quite a multidisciplinary field. I know people, I have colleagues who come from chemistry backgrounds, I have those who come from more pure geology backgrounds, some from a hydrogeology background, so it's very varied. So I think a degree that gives that breadth of knowledge for you is very important.